So the world's eyes are glued to the East Room of the White House right now. And once these European leaders are done speaking, the press will be ushered out, kicked out. They're going to kick them out. And the group will work to hammer out at least the beginnings of what a deal between Russia and Ukraine would look like for peace. Sir William Browder is the CEO of Hermitage Capital. He's the author of Red Notice, the book about avenging the murder of his accountant, his Russian accountant, Sergei Magnitsky, who had unearthed massive corruption in Russia under President Putin. Bill, thank you for joining us. What is the most important thing you've heard so far?
Well, I mean, the most important thing I heard so far was the at the meeting between Zelensky and Trump.
Right.
It was a cordial meeting. It was such a different tone from the meeting, the first meeting that they had, and you know, everybody who cares about Ukraine was just watching it and hoping that there wasn't some other type of blow up. And so the fact that it all went smoothly, I think, was a really important part of the whole thing. And then, of course, I mean, to the extent that there is any type of agreement that the United States would participate in a force to guarantee the security of Ukraine is equally important. But I should point out that all this is great stuff, but I kind of feel like we're all negotiating with ourselves here. Vladimir Putin, he doesn't want to stop this war. I think his whole objective in Anchorage was just to basically carry on with the war and not have these crippling oil sanctions that have been threatened against him before that meeting. And Vladimir Putin needs this war in order to stay in power. And so I think he's trying to mislead and trick Donald Trump and everybody else with this talk about an actual peace negotiation. I think that we could be here 6 months or a year from now, and there won't be any peace in Ukraine because Putin doesn't want any peace in Ukraine.
Well, it could be that, or it is President Trump maybe who is tricking Vladimir Putin. And I only say that because, listen, a lot of people, even conservatives, did not like what they saw in Anchorage. It looked like the president was clapping when President Putin, who's a violent, warmonger, obviously, arrived on American soil. Putin got to speak first, all of this. And yet here you see a very public display of President Trump with Europe's leaders, from NATO to the European Union to all of these countries. And he couldn't have been more flowery or complimentary of NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte. I mean, he absolutely just speaks so highly of him. Of Keir Starmer of the UK, he said he's a great guy. Everybody likes him. French President Emmanuel Macron, and believe me, they've tussled too. Trump said, I liked him from day one. I like him even more now. Listen, Macron has been very hard on Putin. Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany, he called him a strong leader, an honor to have as my friend. President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, he just was very positive. And then he said that the European Union President Ursula von der Leyen respected all over the world. So you pair that, Bill, with we are going to help Europe secure Ukraine, and that should mean something, does it not?
It absolutely means something if there is something to secure. So at the end of the day, there has to be a negotiation that between Russia and Ukraine. There has to be some type of situation where they come to terms and say, okay, we're no longer going to be at war. And at that point, you've got this absolutely glorious collection of countries and people and leaders who are ready to secure the peace afterwards. But you can't get there unless you have a peace deal. And the problem for Vladimir Putin is that he can't not be at war. And I've known this guy for 2 decades, and the way that he stays in power is to be at war. And so I think it's all this stuff is great in the White House. It's amazing that we have all this incredible transatlantic unity, but it doesn't matter if Vladimir Putin is not going to stop. And the only thing that can make Vladimir Putin stop is if he has to stop. And we are not doing stuff to make him stop. You make a murderer, thug, mafia guy stop by putting the boot on the throat. And how do you get the boot on the throat? Well, you give them Ukrainians the weapons they need, and you cut off Russia's oil money. And that was what was threatened before.
Yeah, and I have to say, if you just look at the map right now, this land swap, and that's a fancy way of saying territorial concessions, on behalf, of course, of Crimea. I mean, you talk about the conditions that Russia's demanding. Listen, Crimea, which Russia invaded and snapped off in 2014, he's never going to give that back. And, we also look at the Donbas region of Donetsk and Luhansk. I mean, this is the very crucial mineral-rich area. Do you think Ukraine would or should give up that territory?
I don't think Ukraine should. I don't think they will. And moreover, if you actually look at what Putin is asking for, he wants much more than that. I don't know. Everybody is sort of assuming that if Ukraine were to give that up, that would be the end of the story. But that's just not true. Putin, he says we want to know we want to deal with the root causes of this war. And what that root causes means is he wants to eliminate Ukraine as an independent country.
Yeah, I just want to let's listen in on what President Trump is saying right now.
And we'll see if it can be done. And it's possible it might not be able to be done. On the other hand, it's possible it will. And we're going to save thousands and thousands of lives a week. And so it's something we really have to do. And or at least we have to give it our best. It's all you can do. You can give it your best. But I think we may have a very good outcome. So I want to thank you all, and the media, I want to thank you. We're going to be staying here for a little while. Then we're going to walk over to the Oval Office, and we're going to have another little discussion about similar matters. And then they're going to go home to their great countries and report. And I'm going to remain here and work, and you're going to go and work. We're all going to be working. We may be in a different location, but that's what we know how to do is work. But I want to thank the media. Has been actually very fair, generally speaking, very fair. I think it's important that they're fair because this is a very important subject. We have to get it ended. And so that's all we ask for is fairness with the media. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a hard no on questions, I would imagine. President Trump wrapping at least the public portion of this extraordinary meeting here. And Bill, what is the one thing President Trump could do to inflict the most pain on Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, to get him to stop attacking? There was an attack as recently as yesterday. A Ukrainian toddler was killed. He's not letting up at all.
Yeah, he's not letting up at all, and nor does he have any intention of letting up. What President Trump can do is exactly what he threatened to do leading into the Anchorage meeting with Putin, which is to impose secondary sanctions on China, India, Turkey, and any other country that buys Russian oil. There's a piece of legislation which is sitting out there right now, co-sponsored by Senator Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, which would impose 500% tariffs on countries that buy Russian oil. It's been co-sponsored by 84 senators. 84 out of 100 senators have co-sponsored that legislation. If that legislation or something similar, which President Trump had proposed, was actually inflicted so that Putin could not sell his oil to those countries, he would be without $200 to $300 billion of cash. And he would then be on his knees in 3 months or 6 months asking for a proper peace negotiation. Really,
and the natural gas issue is really crucial as well. It's amazing to see how cheap natural gas is right now, how cheap oil is. I mean, it's slightly higher today, but you would think, I mean, it used to be OPEC plus Russia. Russia, a huge producer, has really been, in a way, I wouldn't say brought to its knees, but certainly the ankles are bending, the Achilles are hurting, especially when, I mean, look, President Trump slapped a 50% tariff on India, specifically stating it's because you're buying Russian oil. That's got to hurt Russia, right?
It will hurt Russia if it actually goes into effect. It hasn't gone into effect yet. And China buys a lot more oil from Russia than India and also Turkey. And so that's the key to the whole thing. It's about money. If Russia doesn't have the money to fight the war, then they have to negotiate. But, you know, Putin is not he's an evil, murderous psychopath. And you can't talk nicely to a psychopath and expect them to like be nice back to you. That's just not how it works. The way it works is you do something to him that's just so painful to him that he's got to be practical and says, okay, you know, how do I work my way out of this mess? he doesn't feel that way right now.
Yeah, and he's willing to sacrifice more than 1 million of his own Russian soldiers for this ridiculous invasion that's been going on for 3 years. I do want to bring in the Melania Trump issue. She had President Trump hand Putin a letter, and it talked a lot about the children of the world. And in a way, I mean, if you read between the lines, she was pinning him with taking the laughter and the security of children in that region away. And that, again, the underpinnings of it is that the Russians have abducted thousands of Ukrainian children and brought them into Russian-controlled territory and tried to make them Russian. She's a secret weapon, is she not, in a way?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very powerful bit of what I guess I might call soft power to throw into the mix. And by the way, and a great initiative. And by the way, I'm sure you saw in the meeting with President Zelensky, he delivered then a letter from his wife to Donald Trump to deliver to Melania, thanking her for doing that. And I should also point out that the reason that Vladimir Putin is an indicted war criminal is because of those children. Because you can't just do mass kidnapping of children from another country and expect that, I mean, children are the most sacred resource of any country. To take away the Ukrainian children and try to basically make them Russian and away from their families is the most heinous crime you can commit. And so good for her for sending that letter. And that is why Putin is such a nasty piece of work, is because that's the kind of stuff he does on a daily basis.
Sir William Browder, thank you so much for being our commentator through all of this. A perfect person to do it, considering all of what you've gone through with Vladimir Putin. Thank you so very much. We appreciate it.